Welcome to Medicine with the Metals. I'm Mark. Michelle's out today, and I'm in a different little studio, so you get to see my kitchen today instead of our studio. But we have a really good guest today. Her name is Ashley Carmen. Ashley's a licensed psychotherapist, and she's the founder of Psychedelic Guide Network, which I'm really interested in hearing about. It's a peer-led community that supports practitioners working in this space. So I'm going to go ahead and let Ashley introduce herself.
Let's see, introducing myself. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, psychedelic psychotherapist, also, as you mentioned, the founder of Psychedelic Guide Network, and yeah, just overall human advocate for plant medicine and really interested in the consciousness evolution here, not just for our society, but also for guides.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So I like to ask people that I like to really start with this question. What was your first really profound experience that you said, these medicines work? This is working for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many different profound experiences. Like the one that's coming up for me right now was an experience that I had with psilocybin, and it was an ego dissolution after ego dissolution. Luckily, I was more advanced in my journeying by then, but it what culminated for me from that ego dissolution after ego dissolution was the fact that love was the only thing that was real. That was like the cherry that I took out of that experience. And in this experience, I was totally losing the frame of reality. I was kind of like in this washer machine of my ego being like constructed, dissolved. And the only thing I could really grasp onto was a photo of my husband and I in our living room. And while everything else was slipping away, my name, time, space, orientation, I saw that photo and I'm like, oh, that's love. Love feels familiar in this space. Love feels real in this space. And love was the anchor that really grounded me through that experience. A little bit terrifying, but huge lesson around love and like really embodying it and letting that be the foundation of what's real for me. So that was a really profound experience. And yeah, there are others, of course, that have also helped me understand just the profound nature of the medicine and how they actually are medicine and work.
Yeah, because they are medicines. Let's explain to the audience a little bit because we hear about this a lot. Ego dissolution, common things that happened to me in the very beginning. But let's explain, or let me have you explain to the audience what ego dissolution is, so what it looks like to you.
Yeah, I mean, ego dissolution to me ultimately means losing the frame, losing the structure of the ego that is typically helping you navigate this 3D reality. And ego will get a bad rap sometimes. I find that people that are early in their journey or just getting into psychedelic work and they become aware of the ego, they become aware of how the ego has been conditioned by the history of their experiences, and the ego holds patterns, the ego holds cognitive distortions. It often becomes demonized, but it's actually really quite necessary to have the ego in this. It's helping us filter this reality. We're not taking in all of this other information. So, I actually enjoy collaborating with my ego and reconditioning and unlearning from the ego. And so during a psychedelic experience, when an ego dissolves, in my experience, what that feels like is really losing some of that basic information that the ego holds. Like I've had some of my first journeying. I remember forgetting my name. I remember forgetting how I got to where I was and feeling really disoriented because that frame wasn't in place, and being invited to see what else was there. Now, though that journey specifically was a lot about security, a lot about safety without needing any of that framework and just finding it within myself underneath the ego. Um, but yeah, ego dissolution is also really powerful because it does melt down those cognitive distortions. It does melt down those limiting belief patterns and invites opportunity to create something new on top of it or to replace it with something that's more helpful. And that's where neuroplasticity comes into place when we're repatterning ourselves. So I think in a nutshell, all of the cognitive frames that are in place being dissolved would be my description of ego dissolution.
You said something really profound at the beginning because we kind of, I thought that same thing in the beginning. I said, this is an evil part of me. No, it's not. You become amigos with your ego is what I used to say in the beginning. Amigo with my ego. So, because I feel that the ego is our protectors on the way up the ladder to our growth. They're our protectors. They're where we couldn't deal with that trauma at the moment. It protected us. And let's not go fucking back there again. Let's just keep that away from us for now.
Right.
So that's a really, I like how we both put that together and made it really simple for people to understand. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to dissolve pieces of us that aren't meant to be.
Right. Alchemize. Alchemize, transform, transmute. And there's the intellectual, and then there's also the energetic as well. And I think often in psychedelic spaces, people will go nonverbal because there's been a dissolution of like cognitive frameworks and cognitive functioning. And what you're really working with in those spaces is the energetics that are present. And also some energetics that require transmuting, require transformation, and all that's possible in a medicine space.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were trained with MAPS and you also did some teachings with the Bastek, right?
Received, yeah, teachings from the Mazatec from the School of Consciousness Medicine, who's since rebranded. But yeah, my training in the psychedelic space has included the School of Consciousness Medicine. I went through one of their cohorts. It was ended 2/3 of the way through, so we didn't all fully complete, but that's a whole other story. And what they were teaching was the intersection of ancient wisdom and Western psychology, which really spoke to me. And their learnings were from Huautla de Jimenez in Oaxaca. One of the teachers, founders of the school, was well, the parent of the founder of the school had spent decades in Huautla with a curandera, a medicine woman who was working with psilocybin in the Mazatec lineage. So they shared some of their rituals and some of their teachings in this training as well.
It's really interesting. So we're trying to bring these two worlds together is what we're really trying to do. So like a lot of practitioners are jumping into this space. They see it. They see what's going on. They've lived the practitioner's life for a little while, seeing people not getting healthy, living the same, being on meds, blah, 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 blah. We can go through the whole spiel. So what do you think in the training is so they're coming up with all these technical ways to heal people. Do you think the missing solution here is diving into the medicine? Do you think enough practitioners have that experience with the medicine?
In order to dive in?
Yeah. Like what I'm saying is a lot of people, a lot of coaches and people are coming to this space that are
Uh-huh.
already registered nurses or whatnot. They're
Yeah,
with the
uh,
practitioners and whatnot. Do you think they have enough experience with psychedelics to actually, do you think there needs to be some
Oh,
connection
there
to sit with psychedelics first to
oh,
even
yeah.
understand that.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing watching the medical model usher in psychedelics for treatment, while I appreciate that notion because it really allows psychedelics to go mainstream and, provides access in a lot of ways, what comes with it is the missing wisdom from other civilizations, other journeyers, other entrepreneurs, other non-licensed practitioners that do have experience with the medicine, so and what comes with the medical model ushering in psychedelics is a whole slew of licensed practitioners kind of being put on a pedestal or prioritized in order to sit with somebody in a journey space. And so to your point, are they fully prepared? If they haven't sat with any psychedelics, I'd say no, just flat blank. But I do also want to recognize that depending on the type of licensed practitioner that we're talking about here. So myself, for example, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I was trained in clinical psychology. I worked in addiction and recovery. I sat with a ton of trauma, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. And what that allowed me to do was become aware of my nervous system and how it adjusts and adapts in the room. Become aware of other people's nervous systems and what trauma looks like, what manic looks like, what depression looks like, how it manifests, and to really learn how to work with that in the room. And so, I'm not sure of RNs or psychiatrists even. What I'm talking about specifically is licensed practice psychotherapists. So there is that piece that I think that they have, and that is incredibly valuable when going into these psychedelic spaces, but that's just one piece. Uh, Often with licensed psychotherapists, they're trained to work, depending on degree, there's transpersonal and other somatic psychotherapists, but speaking from a clinical psychology master's degree, there's a lot of focus and emphasis and has been historically on the intellectual, on the head, and not enough focus on dropping into the body, the soma, the energetics, the spiritual aspects that you'll get with transpersonal psych. Um, and so there really is a learning curve to stepping into a medicine space, not just embodying the technique, experiencing the technique, having your own lived experience. You have your own wisdom to speak from, guide, bumper rail from. But yeah, also learning how to work with the medicine because it's not quite I don't experience the medicine as just another technology or just another modality or just another orientation, how IFS might be or CBT or DBT might be. I really experience it as a higher intelligence. And so there's also an aspect here of establishing a relationship and rapport. And, maybe we get into this a little bit later, but reverence with the medicine because this is a collaboration and maybe even a little bit less than a collaboration. I often like the medicine takes the lead in these spaces because it does have that higher intelligence. And so I'm here as a steward to support and service. And so none of that would be experienced if a practitioner has not experienced psychedelics themselves. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Psychedelic experiences are needed for any kind of in any person who wants to sit and guide these journeys, but especially for licensed practitioners who are you know, being invited in really generously to provide this psychedelic assisted treatment.
Well, we're going to stay on the subject because I think this is what people really want to hear. So you're absolutely right. There's a Western world, and you're a perfect example of what we need right now because Western world is going to believe the person in the white coat. Even the person in that white coat has lied to us for the last 30, 20, how many years, they're still going to have trust in the person with the white coat. Okay. So they're not going to have trust with the underground person that's been there for so long. So Western world right now has its place, but you, you nailed it on the head. Western world wants to go for the mind. They want to always look to the mind and let's fix the mind and let's do this. It's great. Let's fix the mind. But most of our traumas sit in our bodies. Most of our traumas sit in our guts. Our gut is so overlooked in the Western world medicine field because I don't think they want us to fix it because I fully believe if you have a gut alignment, your gut is in line, your gut is clean. That's everything. That's your dopamine. That's your serotonin. That's your really, I feel, is your first brain, not your second brain, because it's sending the receptor already to your brain. So, what brain is what? What brain is the first brain? How do you feel really about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on day 59 of a 60-day parasite cleanse.
Fantastic.
Let me tell you,
Best
I'm
feeling ever, right? Right?
best thing ever, hardest thing ever. I mean, we went
Hmm.
into like a strict paleo, so
Hmm.
I haven't had any carbs. We've basically been in keto for several weeks. A lot of meat, a lot of cruciferous veggies, zero sugar, zero carbs, some carbs from the veggies, but not very much. And so we've been cleaning out the gut and I don't know if this is TMI, but I'm gonna share it anyway. We've also been doing coffee enemas with this parasite cleanse because, we're killing these parasites, we need to flush them out, so we've been taking binders from the cleanse and also taking our own, charcoal binder and also doing coffee enemas to help flush the intestines, get the colon and the liver and everything pumping and clean, and what I noticed during this time is that I have been incredibly clear. And I experienced, I wouldn't say like a level of bliss or euphoria, how you might experience with like Kana or MDMA, but I experienced a deep level of peace. And I was talking to my husband about this because we're both doing the cleanse and we're like, what is that? What is this like? It almost feels after a coffee enema, it almost feels like a bit of like a psychedelic journey that we're in. Like the veil is pretty thin. And we came to the same determination you were just talking to, and obviously there's science around this, but like, oh, the gut, serotonin receptors, which are similar systems that the psychedelics work on. There's that aspect of it. And we're also removing all of the stagnant energy from the gut. We're removing the parasites from the gut. And so as we remove the stagnant energy, as we remove the impurities and flush them out, we then become a clear channel for the divine, greater self, consciousness, Buddha, God, however you want to name it, to come in which I think is ultimately what we're also accessing in these altered states. So, removing impurities, removing stagnant energy, absolutely, there's a lot of that in the gut, and the gut is very indicative, of what's going on, in the mind, in the body, and, yeah, powerful place to start.
It's funny, me and my wife, you're way ahead of us. We just started this parasite cleanse. We're on the first kind of clean out phase, but I almost feel what you're saying already. A little, my guts feel lighter, and I just feel a clarity, like a really starting to get a clarity. And you know, we all have parasites, so let people know this. Every person on the face of this earth has parasites. As older we get, they just manifest in parts of our lungs, our brains, our stomach. They just manifest everywhere. It is a brutal process to go through if you don't do it right. It will make you deathly sick. It really will. You have to do this process of cleansing right. They could sell all these cleanses online and tell you this is perfect. You have to have binders, and it's going to be, you're going to feel sick for a little while if you don't do it right.
Yeah, as the parasites die off, you do start to experience fatigue. It's not fully, a full free ride the whole time where you're free and clear and present and clean. There are moments during die off where it's kind of tough and you feel almost sick a little bit. And if you don't do it right, you're also at jeopardy of potentially bringing parasites back in even more of a full force. So you want to make sure that you get them entirely before you start jumping into like a typical diet that they like with sugar and carbs and all that stuff. And then you rebirth them in some ways. So it is important to do a full protocol.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the food we have to do with that causes these parasites. So
Yeah.
our food in the States is not good. So we all know that. Let's dive into a little bit about you're doing something that very, very interests me. And we'll talk about this afterwards. The Psychedelic Guide Network. Let's talk a little bit about this. Okay. What is it?
The Psychedelic Guide Network is a community of psychedelic guides, psychedelic practitioners, therapists, coaches, MDs, medicine men, medicine women, shamanic practitioners, anybody who's serving psychedelic medicine joins our community for peer to peer support. And what this community does is we put guides, coaches, practitioners into groups of 7 to 10 for their own consciousness development, for their own self inquiry, to help increase their confidence and their awareness as they hold the seat of the guide.
How are people accepting this?
Oh, they love it. I mean, we have some circles that have been running for 2 plus years, and the connection that happens, finding a tribe of psychedelic professionals that take the work seriously, not that people are like too strict or required to follow any one way of practicing. I mean, we really embrace the bridge, the spiritual and the clinical. That's one of the points of this community. We bring everybody together because we believe that it's one collective that's going to bring us through. And we see the diverse approaches, licensed, unlicensed, shamanic, and think that it's all necessary. So we put them all in one room. People love having a diverse group of other professionals that are serving medicine so that they can be introduced to different perspectives. But it's also really nice having a group that you trust, that you can ping at any time when you're sitting with a journeyer, before or after, a group that you can bring a whole case into, a client that you've been working with, or a situation that went pretty clunky, and get some trusted feedback because you know these people. But it's also done in a way where there's a lot of compassion, there's a lot of empathy, and there's a ton of like tender holding when we get to these places within ourselves. So yeah, the resourcing, the networking, the support, the growth of the guys, people are accepting it very well.
Yeah. Because it is all about community. We have to like, there's something about when you get into this space, you can't do this alone. I mean, it is a solo journey. It really is. But you need the support of a community to understand. And I think you see that. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
we need to, let's talk about that a little bit, how important community is, because we're all on the same page here. We're all healing from something and we're all looking for something different. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, we're all humans. I mean, if you're a guide or just not just a journeyer, but if you're a journeyer, not a practitioner, you're just exploring for yourself, or if you're a practitioner, I mean, we're all human and we all have traumas. We all have experiences. We all have moments where we don't feel our best. We all want to feel better. And so we all do share that. And it's really good to have community to help normalize that. And specifically for practitioners not operating in isolation and for practitioners being in community, this is an accountability piece. This is saying I'm staying accountable to my work. I care enough about my clients and what I personally bring into a session to set myself up in a group of mirrors. It's really important to be in community because those are your mirrors. And when you're talking about your work and having things reflected back to you, that you might not see because we all have our blinders, whether you're a practitioner or not, we have blinders. When you're in a romantic relationship, your partner is the best mirror because they're with you all the time. They're constantly reflecting. And so, yeah, being in community is incredibly important to have that, to have normalizing the validation, the support, the encouragement, but also to have the accountability to see what you don't see so that you could take action on it if required.
Ashley, let's talk about mirrors a little bit because in the beginning, that really, really confused me. I was like, well, if he's my mirror, so let's explain mirrors to people, how they actually resonate with us because they're a beautiful thing. They heal most everything if you really look inward.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you're seeing on the outside, what's being reflected to you on the outside is ultimately a reflection, of the inside, of your inner world. What you are in agreement with on the inner will certainly manifest and present itself on the outer. What you are picking up on in terms of conversations, what your psyche is primed to notice when somebody shares with you about something, is all indicative of your inner state. And so if you're driving around town and you're always, just for low hanging fruit example, picking up on red cars, well, it's probably because you have a red car or you're looking to buy a red car. You start seeing them everywhere, and that's what you've been primed to see. So that system is activated. Um, if you are always picking up on people who, I don't know, are into Mexican food, you know what I mean? Well, that must be something that you're into or something that you're primed for. Like it's something going on the inner that's being reflected to you on the outer. And so that's how I see people as our mirrors. Like, what are these interactions teaching me? What do these interactions actually mean? What is in front of me that I'm picking up on? How have I become in agreement, or how have I chosen this type of an interaction or this type of a situation? This situation keeps on returning, this conversation keeps on returning because there's something going on in the inner for me that I must be anchored into and energetically logged in my subconscious that I'm attracting back in. And so, yeah, I love that you say that it all starts on the inner because that's really the most empowering position to come from. And that's how I'm experiencing consciousness and how I think this reality is actually created and devised, and how you become your creator. It's because of what you are permitting, allowing, and choosing on the inside.
So there's an example here when somebody really irritates you or that guy really makes me mad, and then you're looking at him as that mirror. That's the mirror you're seeing. But when does a mirror become a point where that guy's just a jerk? When
Mm,
does that happen?
yeah, that's a good question. I think it matters. The turning point there, the key element there is, what did you do when that guy was a jerk to you? Was that something that did an emotion initiate? Did you get stuck on that and you couldn't stop thinking about that guy for the rest of the day? Or did you peacefully walk away and you're like, "Oh, that guy's just a jerk and I'm going about my business." Because if it registered on your radar, then that's something for you. That's information for you. "Oh, my dad was a jerk. That's why it bothers me so much. My boyfriend's been a jerk for a while. That's why it registers for me so much." But if you can walk away from that peacefully and it's not a thing for you, then you're not really noticing it or picking up on it, and then that guy's just a jerk, if that's how you wanna phrase it. I mean, even think, like, the labeling can be interesting there too because that really,
Absolutely, of course.
imposes some kind of, like, reaction that you had, but, "Oh, that guy's having a tough day." Like,
Yeah,
"Alright, that's him, not me, moving on," kind of a thing.
I like how you explained that. That was really good. It made me look at myself in a different way, like the jerk of it. So let's talk about this a little bit. Embodied ethics is a mission, like a concept you really grasp onto. So, what does it look like when a guide is living in their ethics to you?
When a guide is living in their ethics, and I've from an ayahuasca journey earlier this year, have kind of been moving away from the word ethics because I feel like ethics is First of all, it carries a lot of charge, especially if you're coming from a licensed field. Uh, excuse me. Typically, ethics for licensed psychotherapists carries a lot of consequences. You have to go through training every 2 years. Memorize your ethics. Don't cross them. You'll lose your license if you cross these ethical boundaries. And while I think really good intentioned, it instills a lot of fear in people, and it instills a lot of punishment. There's a lot of punitive recourse if you violate one of these rules. And so because of that charge, I have like moved away from the word. And I also think that that word ethics im implies that there's another governing body that enforces ethics on you, and that's not effective. What's actually effective is actual embodiment of virtues. And so I moved away from ethics and have started talking more about virtues. Embodied virtues, aka embodied ethics, is when a guide is not just saying, "Hey, journeyer, I have these ethics, I have these things that I'm gonna, hold up," but like I'm actually embodying them in this space. So, our virtue might be presence, which is like a pretty low hanging fruit for guiding, right? It requires your presence. And if you say you're committing to ethics, that's one thing. Or I'm sorry, if you say you're committing to your presence, that's one thing. But to actually embody it is the way to not only teach it, but is you holding integrity in your virtue. So embodied virtues looks like guides who are doing their own work and embodying these things that can also be seen as ethical, like reciprocity, discipline, humility. And it's, I think to take it like a step further, it's not just good for journey spaces or for the, client practitioner relationship, but it's also like what creates heaven on earth, if you will. If guides, if people are embodying these virtues and truly living them, then they're not just interactions, they're not just present with their journeyers, they're present with their children, they're present with their spouses, they're present with their family and friends. And um yeah, I think some of these virtues are what our society is really stepping more into, but especially important with specific virtues for facilitation.
Yeah, I see. I can see how ethics can be kind of overused, and because whose ethics? I mean, somebody's ethics could be a lot different than the other person's ethics.
Right, and it's not exciting. I feel like people don't like, "Oh, ethics, I gotta sit through an ethics class. I have to sit through an ethics talk. I have to read this ethics book," But when you're invited into, "Hey, don't just learn about ethics, but, like, embody virtues that are important to you, but also important for the journey space," then there's a bigger ask there.
Hmm, that's an interesting play there. So, what have you learned about the human connection from years of sitting with clients, like in this altered space? What have you learned?
Mm. That every journeyer is a sovereign being. Every journeyer is a sovereign being. Every journeyer has their own path. Every journeyer is at a different place. Every journeyer is um, entitled, more than entitled. Has their God given right to sovereignty, meaning that they are not. I should not be imposing my belief system, my biases, my awakenings on these journeyers, and really finding it crucial to allow them to find their own journey, make their own way, but anchoring into my seat as a facilitator with this sovereign journeyer to just prompt the questions to help them get to where they're going, not any predetermined destination by me. So sovereignty has been one thing that's been really yeah, big in working with people, is really respecting that. And that's another virtue of mine, is embodying my sovereignty, which therefore means I, embody and respect and value everybody else's sovereignty. Um so sovereignty's big, a big one. Um yeah.
Um, we can stay on this because I want to sit here for a minute on this subject. So, when people get off these journeys and you're sitting with them and they come off of a psychedelic journey, no matter if it's ayahuasca, psilocybin, or whatnot, what do you think the most the biggest common, like to say a common denominator response that everybody comes off their journey kind of in tunes to, kind of says, this?
I think they're blown away. I think they're blown away. I think that there's a level of, overwhelm. I think that there's a level of feeling enamored,
Yeah.
and I also think that there's a level of this, like, missionary energy where people are now like, "Oh, I gotta tell everybody about this. I gotta get my
Mm,
mom to do this. I gotta get all
mhm,
my friends to do this."
mhm.
And
What do you think that is, Ashley? Because that happens to it happened to me, it happens to everybody.
yeah.
What do you think that is? Do you think it's because, wow, I saw something different, I had a paradigm shift, I gotta go tell these people, and it's kinda makes you look silly. So
I mean, well, because nobody can truly understand until they've
Right, true,
experienced it, right? Like, you can't
true.
talk your way into, like, actually helping people understand the felt
Yep,
experience, and
yep, yeah,
some of these experiences, they're ineffable, there's no words for them.
yep.
I think that's just it's just representing how much people benefit from it, how much they receive from the experience, and I think people just want other people to also heal. People want other people to also feel good. People want other people, um, to have their mind blown, how they had their mind blown in a good way. And it's not always fun, but it certainly gets to somewhere that's meaningful. And so I think people want that for other people, and that's a really beautiful, well-intentioned gesture, and the medicine isn't for everybody, and I actually think it's a bit of a complication, it's kind of complex, it's a bit layered to try and talk somebody into a psychedelic experience. If somebody's seeking, if somebody's curious, if somebody wants to know, absolutely, all day, share what you have. But to try and impose or force or talk anybody into doing the psychedelically, no matter how much relief you think that they'd experience, it's a very personal decision. And
What do you
so
think that is, though? I mean, what do you think that is? When we could talk so many people into other things, what is it about this medicine that changes, that we see, that people say, "No way, dude, that's crazy." What do you
mhm,
think?
that people say, "No way, what? No way to
"No
what?"
way would I do that. That's crazy. I'm not gonna go there. There's no way." What do you think that is that prevents people from seeing these changes, actually seeing people change, and they still question? They
That's stigma.
still question. You think it is, huh?
Stigma, I think it's stigma, I think it's old narratives, I think it's the war on drugs. I think I held this stigma and belief for a while that psychedelics make you crazy. I worked in a residential rehab where people were coming in detoxing off of a ton of drugs, but also had done mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and had also done LSD, and like were had substance induced active psychosis. And I'm like, oh, those psychedelic medicines, they make people actively psychotic. Like, I'm not doing that. There's no way. And that, I mean, obviously there were a ton of other things. They were using a lot of other drugs. They were under-resourced. They were homeless. They weren't eating. Like, they had all the proper conditions in place to have a psychosis. But I think that the narrative that uh, from the war on drugs, I think that the maybe belief system some people hold that, these drugs will make you crazy, and also just hearing about these really large experiences where somebody's like, I got blasted into the universe, or, I saw UFOs, or I visited my ancestors. I mean, that's pretty gnarly stuff, and usually that can be the cliff notes. And so I think all of that kind of intense information holds people off a bit. And on a deeper level, whether that's just like the conditioning of the ego or the conditioning of intellect, where there's stories and narratives that have been planted in there that are keeping people away. I mean, to meet an ancestor, to really confront yourself, to really have to take responsibility, to be mirrored, to become aware of what you are and how you've been showing up is, it takes courage. You don't just relieve depression with psilocybin. You become aware of what the depression has been about. What is the catalyst? What is it that you're still holding? And then there's work after to take care of it. But to really receive that information, it's a personal journey. People have to step into it on their own, and they have to get the calling. So yeah, it's a beautiful calling, and, we shouldn't be calling other people into it. I don't think sharing, if invited, is different, but talking people into it.
You're absolutely right. 100%. I've learned that early on in this path. You're never going to convince anybody to do this. You're good. They're going to see, they're going to have that calling or whatnot. And I believe, when you come off some of these big experiences, I think people find love for the first time. They don't even know what it is, but they feel a sense of love. And they're like, how is this even possible? Where's this coming from? I think that's really profound in a lot of these psychedelic experiences. There's some, even as chaotic and as crazy as they can be, they always end with love. Isn't that kind of wild?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
Beautiful. I
I
mean, it's
use wild, I use beautiful.
yeah, wild, beautiful. I like wild
Yeah,
too. It's
yeah.
it's wild in that it's universal.
You're right too. It's so universal because it happens all the time. It
Right.
just does. It's like you feel this, and then because this is the most important part, because the medicines are just a catalyst. They just kind of open the pathways, like you said, to observe. The most important part about psychedelics is integration. There's nothing, I mean, the medicine's 10% of this, maybe even less. It's that integration, it's that coming aware of that's that, I gotta fix this. And hmm, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty powerful
Yes.
how that
Yeah,
works.
that's
Especially
right.
when you really know how to do it. And that's where it takes people like you to help people to know, because I would have never known how to do it in the beginning. I, after my first ayahuasca experience, I cried for 3 weeks straight. 3 weeks, I didn't stop. I was like, what is going on with me? This is
Mhm.
crazy. So you really have to have that guidance. And once I found that guidance, everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah, integration is incredibly important. When I work with clients, I let them know that you are your medicine.
Absolutely.
The medicine is
Absolutely.
a spotlight, and you're gonna get your money's worth, the biggest bang for your buck if you take the insights and epiphanies and you apply them. The application of these lessons of the wisdom in your everyday life is integration done well. And it can take a while to integrate some of this stuff. And we can
100%.
still continue to get insights and epiphanies months after, weeks after, months
100%.
after an experience. And so, you know, take that in, like, take your time to integrate too. There's no rush because these are they're life-changing, life-altering events. After my first ayahuasca experience, I was like, "Oh my god, I have a million things to change. Million things to change. How I'm eating, how I'm sleeping, the amount of screen time." Uh, like, I was really aware of what my body was ingesting from just my environment that wanted to keep this connection with the medicine, and I'm like, "I have to keep it clean, I have to keep it pure, I wanna keep this channel open," like, this is why it's so important to, use less plastics or, be aware of the meat that I'm eating and the energy that I'm consuming and what it is on TikTok and the music, like, all of these things can block our energy systems, the chakra systems, and you further and further away from not just the medicine. I think the medicine opens your channels up to your greater self, to your higher self, and I really wanted to keep that connection as much as possible. So anyway, I just went into this overwhelm of like there are a million things to integrate from this experience, and that's really beautiful. Becoming aware in that way, and knowing where there's opportunities, and one thing at a time, one step at a time.
Pretty good. But one thing I can tell you, and hopefully you'll agree, this medicine works. It works when you work it. It really does. It really, if you work this, there's nothing that's not possible, really,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to your mental health. When it
right.
comes to that, and because we're all carrying these traumas, so we have to kind of relieve them somehow. And it kind of gets agonizing after so many years to sit with them, and they keep getting buried and burned. And we got to rid them. And ayahuasca is a beautiful medicine for that because it's purgatory. But there's other medicines that do kind of the similar thing. And like right now, there's a big push for the boa and ibogaine, which you know I think it's the best medicine out there for nervous system. There's nothing that fixes this. There's nothing that, I mean, I can actually say this medicine cures you. It cures you from opioid addiction. It cures your PTSD. I can't say this about anything in the Western world. I can
Well,
actually say I've seen people get cured from Iboga and Ibogaine.
yeah,
So it's pretty amazing. And it's pretty amazing how it's catapulting so quickly right now.
right.
It's pretty powerful.
It's
So
beautiful.
it is. It's absolutely beautiful because, we're in a pretty bad dilemma in the world right now, pretty bad darkness. And it's really crazy that everybody wants to attune to all these drugs. I mean, we all do it. We want to go to something outside of us when everything is inside of us. It's so crazy. But we'll do this. We'll talk about PNG a little bit more. So PGN a little bit more. So because I really see this in this space, and I see it all the time. Imposter syndrome. We're good. We're good at what we do. We know we can do this, but why? In this space, more than anything, why is there such imposter syndrome in this space?
You're working with a different animal. People are you're working with a different animal. You're working with a higher intelligence, and I mean that's humbling. That's really humbling, and I think a lot of people become aware of their, humanness when in the presence of this power of the force of the medicines, and there's real implications for journeying somebody into this space. You know, you're dissolving the ego, you're cracking their frameworks, you're poking holes in their foundations, and there are life changing events happening over and over again. And it's not always seamless. It's not always perfectly streamlined. Like, there are relationships that end. There are people that quit their jobs. Like, people are doing 180s when they're awakening to themselves in this medicine space, and that can also be a lot to hold for a guide, and supporting somebody making the decision that's best for them. There's this general rule, don't make any decisions until at least a month after your experience. Um, so I think holding people in these large experiences, in these awakenings, can lead to some imposter syndrome, or wondering if you're doing it right. I also think that it's still, because it's still, I mean, it's new to our Western society. Obviously, it's not new in other civilizations. People have been doing this for millennia, but it's new to the science world. It's new to the scientific research method. And so, because we're also experiencing it as new, we're always learning about contraindications. Um, and because of that newness, people are still like, am I doing, like, a lot of people that come into PGN, they're like, well, I'm new to the space, and also, like, I've done some training, but it's also just a new field. I wanna make sure that I have these buffers in place and the support in place to make sure that I'm doing it right. So, I think the novelty of the field, and yeah, for I mean, and that maybe that's just for me personally, but like the being in the presence of that power, being in the presence of that force, it's like I'm like, wow, I'm not, this is medicine does all the doctoring on people. I'm just holding space, and my personal experience comes in with like preparation and integration, especially as a psychotherapist, and helping people make sense of their experiences. But when in the room, it's really it's quite sacred. And so finding yourself good enough to confidently say, yes, I'm good enough to sit here with this medicine and to be a steward of it, takes reps, takes an allyship with the medicine, takes a real relationship with the medicine, and takes a good amount of confidence to know that you have your resources or your peer groups in place to make sure that you're holding it, um, and staying in right relationship.
Mm, good response. So science is kind of an overrated word, you know?
Mm.
It's just, what are we doing with science? Science is where the money is, I guess. You know, I like results. I like to see results. Like, if you take 150 people, put them on placebo, and you put them in a therapy session. You take 150 people and you put them on psilocybin, you put them in a therapy session. Let's see results. Let's not
Mhm.
go with science, because science is money. And I know that we'll never get away from that. But science to me is such a different word. It's just it has to. It's what we believe in. We believe in the science of something. But listen, indigenous cultures, all cultures, have been using psychedelics for eons. I mean, it's how we kind of evolved. It's where, I mean, like, it's how the scriptures were wrote. It's like where they went and they did their sacraments in the Bible. They drank the acacia tree. They didn't drink wine. Acacia tree's full of DMT. I mean, let's really talk truth and not stories and facts and you know everything. If you look at all indigenous, or you look at all back, there's a psychedelic concept with everything. Okay, it's how we've grown. And now, all of a sudden, back in the 60s, we just put a caboose to this, and
Mm.
we lost a lot of valuable time. But now it's
Mhm.
back, right?
Yeah, yeah, this is a psychedelic revolution,
Psychedelic
psychedelic
revolution.
renaissance.
And here's another thing that very interests me in this space. It doesn't interest me. It's like, because women really, Women are the empowerment. They definitely are. So 70-30, almost in this psychedelic space of women. So holding space too is another thing. Do you see a difference with a woman holding space than a man holding space? Because for me, I'd rather be with a woman holding space for me, but do you see
Mhm.
a difference there?
Yeah, there's absolutely a difference. Their gender is different.
Mhm. When does that come in play where, do you think it would be better for men to hold men's space for veterans or men to hold men's space? Or when do you think that comes into play?
It really depends on what the journeyer is presenting with. Sometimes it's and a lot of journey spaces will have a male and female duo because it's good to have both of the typical caregivers present to project onto. Sometimes you're working out some mom stuff, sometimes you're working out some dad stuff, sometimes you need you're working on some masculinity. Not to say that a woman can't hold masculinity, you can't work on that with her, but oftentimes it can be a good opportunity for corrective emotional experience if you have a guide that is the same gender of the person that perpetrated you or abused you, or you had some serious conflict with growing up. I mean, that could be a good opportunity. I find that, with women, there just naturally tends to be a lot more of, the mother energy, the nurturing energy. We're all returning to the womb, so it can be really nice to have that soft presence. I think, also historically in traditional medicine, like, women were the healers, women were the medicine woman, the curanderas, and so, um, I think it's also primed in our, genes for women to have this natural knack to energetically attune, to naturally attune to what's coming up in the room and what might be needed. Men absolutely have that as well and can cultivate it more, but, as childbearing women, just a level of tracking, I think, that can happen that most women naturally have and tend to, that works really well in a psychedelic space.
Yeah, it is a motherly kind of love there. So a lot of people say, or some people, I say majority of people say, psychedelic experience is like 10 years of therapy in one session. Do you believe that?
You may have some significant insights that you were not able to achieve in 10 years of therapy. I think that, yeah, it certainly can feel more profound than 10 years of therapy, but, again, it's gonna take you 10 years after those insights to do the work. You know what I mean? To share that it's just in 1 night of therapy is, like, all of the work that I've done in 10 years, I feel like it's a little misleading, and inaccurate, but I hear that people are saying I've had more what I hear in that is that people are having way more profound insights that they weren't able to get to. They were able to access layers and depths of themselves that they weren't able to get to with just talk therapy, which makes a lot of sense, and I am in agreement in that, but that then what? That actually doesn't really matter much. Those insights don't matter much if you don't do anything with them, and then you might need 10 years of therapy to help apply, integrate, implement. So, I understand it, and yeah, as a licensed psychotherapist, I also think it depends on the type of therapy you were doing. When I hear that, I'm like, "Oh, well, they weren't sitting with me." Like, there was, a lot of profound insights and things that we accessed over 10 years, and the medicine is also incredibly different
Hmm.
in, how it introduces you to yourself.
It really does introduce you to yourself, doesn't it? If you listen too. So let's share a moment. Would you mind sharing a moment, whether like personal or professional, that affirmed you were like you walking the right path in founding this network and just
Mm,
walking the right path in general?
mhm. Yeah, I spent 6 months with a pharmaceutical company back in 2022, who was developing a synthetic psychedelic, and I was gonna be part of a clinical trial, as a lead therapist and needed to go shadow another clinical trial on site, and when I went to go shadow that clinical trial on site, I walked into the lab, I saw the subjects, I learned about the trial, I saw the testing that was being done, I was introduced to the room, and my body intelligence was like, "Absolutely not." This is not the way forward. This is not how I'm supposed to spend my vitality, my energy, in supporting this psychedelic emerging. this psychedelic movement that's happening. This is not where I'm supposed to be. And so I quit on the spot when I was there in person for the first time. And that to me was one of the, like, prime moments where I'm like, "Okay, Psychedelic Guide Network really matters." Like, it's actually really important for me to help bridge people, to help bring the collective together, to help licensed practitioners be introduced to other modalities so that they're not hijacked by this siloed medical model and the old paradigm, and for this new paradigm to evolve. So that was a moment where my body intelligence and everything that I had experienced from my psychedelic experiences was like, okay, this is not the way forward. This is a no. And I was really full send on PGN at that point.
That's beautiful. I like that, those paradigms. When we have those paradigm shifts, so we really see, we can't unsee, can we?
You can't, yeah, you can't. And it's my body. I just couldn't ignore what was coming. It was so palpable. It was so dense, and I could not ignore it. It wasn't just like, "Oh, I'll put it under my conscience. My conscience is aware." It's just I physically could not be in that approach to this path. It wasn't for me.
It's because you're awake. You see it. You've seen both sides, and you've lived both sides too, which makes this conversation really, really powerful today. So, as psychedelic medicine continues and it moves forward with legalization, with decriminalization, with the education, what do you see? Well, how do we maintain? Here goes that word. Let's go integrity. How do you maintain the integrity of the space?
It's hard to know exactly what and how we're using the word integrity, because I also believe that, like, the psychedelic movement is happening because the medicine is an ecosystem that's choosing to emerge. So as much as we create a field or create an industry or create treatments with psychedelics, I also believe that it's here because the higher intelligence, plant medicines have been like, it's time to emerge, ecosystem happening. So, like, the integrity of maintaining that and the higher intelligence and that profound, um, knowing how that wants to unfold, I'm not sure I'm fully aware of what that's supposed to look like. I know that it's all perfect, I can get a little abstract here, but and philosophical, but I know that the unfolding is actually perfect and what it's supposed to be. But I believe that, having really incredibly diverse groups from all different lineages, different, you know, treatment programs, licensed professionals, similar to what we're doing at PGN, having all of this body of wisdom and knowledge coming from clinical or spiritual or indigenous or modern coming together and working together, is going to be really important in all of us finding the integral way through. Um, and so that's kind of like on a macro level, and like we do that on a micro level of PGN with groups of 7 to 10, but that's going to be incredibly important. I also think just for like a micro level and individual journeyer's perspective is really maintaining integrity in the medicine space is, knowing what's yours and what's something else that might have been planted, is becoming really good at discernment, at discerning between this is actually my truth, this is coming from me, this is what I experienced with the medicine, versus this is something that was suggested to me or something that I picked up from somewhere else. So honoring our kind of meta here, but like honoring our truth, and really walking in that without influence, and keeping the communication pools incredibly diverse and fluid, and collaborative is what I think will help us maintain integrity as we figure out what this turns into on
Hmm.
a larger scale.
It's awesome because I see this like I'm 58, you're a lot younger than me. So I see this as, you know, there is something happening right now. There's some kind of shaking and moving. And like I've never seen this before like this. Like people want, like people are screaming, like, I want out. How can I get out? What is the way out? And I don't know. Psychedelics are not for everybody because it takes a lot of work. And we have to tell people that this is not like, oh, go take this medicine, one and done. I'm finished. I'm good. This is for me, this is a lifelong process. People say, when am I going to be healed? What is it? Why do you want to be healed? I mean, I shouldn't say that. When am I going to be fixed? Like, why don't you want to keep learning? Why don't you want to keep knowing? Why do you want to stay stagnant? Isn't that crazy? To me, that's kind of like, I mean, before I could understand that. I'm good. When am I going to be good? I don't
Well,
think. I ever, from my age, I don't think I ever want to be good. I just want to be better.
It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong process. Consciousness is a rabbit hole. It never stops. And with more experiences, the more your psyche gathers, with the longer you live, the different things are coming in and out of your psyche. I mean, there's just constant need for evolving yourself and in whatever trajectory it is. But if you're choosing a conscious path, then know that it's infinite. It's an infinite journey and there's infinite work to be done.
You said something at the beginning of this conversation. I'll end this quickly. But you said something about relationships. And I think relationships are so important, like in everything, like relationship with your wife, your kids. Like we really have to look at relationships. Like they really have to be looked at as, why am I in this situation? Why am I here? Why am I in this relationship with this person? And look at that. Even when it begins at the beginning, the relationship with yourself. Once you get the relationship with yourself, you can move on to the next relationship.
Mhm.
Your marriage becomes solid when you really, like, conflict resolution, stuff like this, when you really look at things like this and say, hmm, I'm not always right. Hmm. Everything's everything's like really cool when you go inside.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the relationship is the vehicle of change. A lot of things, because you're constantly rubbing up against stuff or gliding smoothly against things or rubbing up against stuff and that's those if you're aware and noticing those can be moments of great insight and moments of great redirection, recalibration, if you're attuning to what's happening within you while you're in these relationships. So yeah, relationships are such a gift. uh, and they're everywhere, by the way. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with the world around you, relationship and yeah, like and what the real key is knowing how you show up in those relationships. Do I value this tree? Do I have a virtue of reverence? That means I have reverence for the land, reverence for people. And so how you're showing up in relationship is actually where the word ethics comes from. Ethics doesn't exist without relationship. So a relationship is a big one.
Well, this was a really great conversation. Very knowledgeable woman you are. So keep doing what you're doing. Why don't you tell people where they can find you at, please?
Sure, yeah. They can visit our website at psychedelic-guide-network.com if they want to check me out on LinkedIn, which is where we connected. I got a lot of activity there, a lot of polls and fun stuff that I put out. Ashley Carmen on LinkedIn, and we also have a LinkedIn page, Psychedelic Guide Network, and on Instagram, the Ashley Carmen Journey.
Yeah. LinkedIn loves psychedelics.
Yeah, LinkedIn does love
They
psychedelics.
love psychedelics.
Now,
I'm really impressed.
yeah, with your audience, if there's any coaches, guides, practitioners, we actually have a new cohort starting in February of our Inner Ethics Wisdom Circle. So if people do want to join those small peer support groups, we have a training in January and then circles starting in February.
Awesome. Me and my wife are going to get connected with you after this call because I think we can collaborate on a lot of things. But it was a really great conversation
Awesome.
today. You're really knowledgeable, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mark.